Welcome to the webinar on planning your independent surrogacy journey. My name is Bram from GoSurrogacy.com, and today I'm being joined by Angela and Christina of It's Time Surrogacy, a full-service surrogacy agency based in San Marcos, California. Angela has worked in the fertility domain for over 20 years and has extensive experience working with fertility centers all over the world. Angela also has both served as an egg donor and a gestational surrogate. Christina has made dreams come true for 5 families by becoming a surrogate. She has extensive knowledge of the inner workings of the surrogacy journey, and together with Angela, she is now co-owner of It's Time Surrogacy, helping intended parents with building their family. Now, I think most of us agree that the cost of surrogacy is high, and for many intended parents, this might withhold them from starting their journey. Now, today's speakers will share how you can prepare for an independent surrogacy journey as a cost-saving alternative. So welcome, Angela and Christina.
Thanks for everybody for joining us and such a great introduction. Yes, Christina and I both have been involved for a very long time in different scenarios. So we'll just get started and kind of go over what we're going to cover in this session. We're really going to talk about selecting an IVF clinic, which you may or may not need, advice on, selecting attorney, finding a surrogate, screening a surrogate, trust account management, and legal contract drafting. These are kind of the big areas you need to consider and think about, and really have as much knowledge as possible if you're deciding to move forward in an independent surrogacy situation. So selecting an IVF clinic, there are some things to really look at. Location is one, location to you, location to the surrogate, also the surrogacy laws connected with that location. There are a lot of cities, states, and countries where it's not legal. So it is very important to know the laws of the location that your surrogacy is going to take place. Not only the transfer, but also where she lives and where the delivery is going to happen. Also, you need to know if they're even willing and capable to work with independent surrogacy matches. There are some centers that simply will not do this. Most of them will, but there are some that don't. So it's a very good question to ask. Also is the success rate. So that's the big thing. Make sure you get that information as well. As far as selecting an attorney, make sure that you have separate representation for you and the surrogate. The experience of the attorney is definitely very important. They must practice reproductive law. This is something that you really should not negotiate on. You don't really want to go to, a friend who's a bankruptcy attorney to draft the contract when they're not familiar with reproductive law, especially when it comes to surrogacy, because the laws vary so much, just state to state and definitely country to country. And if you're out of the country, make sure you consult an attorney in your country, because the laws there also impact how things are going to go once the child is born, getting back into the country and establishing citizenship where you're at. So those are some pretty important things to think about and to know when selecting an attorney. So what you need to do before you even start searching for your surrogate, really you need to decide on what you are searching for in a surrogate. Do you want to be able to transfer more than one embryo? Do you want her to follow some type of diet? Do you want how much contact do you want? Do you want to be friends, or do you want more of a business relationship? What type of situation do you want after delivery? Also know what location that you're wanting or needing a surrogate to live in. That's really key, so that you fall in line not only with the laws, but also what's comfortable for you. Be sure you know your stances on the important details, such as, do you want her to breastfeed afterwards? Do you want to transfer more than one embryo? Are you wanting to be able to terminate, reduce if there's multiples or health issues with the baby? Also, it is suggested, and definitely something that I would do, is create an in-depth questionnaire for her to complete so that you know that you're getting all of the answers that you need. And then make sure you have an attorney that you'll be working with. Have that already in place before you even start your search, because that's the biggest hurdle as far as getting, babies back into the country. And also, are they willing to help you? Are you comfortable with them? And that's a good solid base to have going into searching for a surrogate. And so when you're going to create that questionnaire I talked about, some of the questions that you should ask is, what's the social and marital questions, financial questions? Is she stable financially? Is she married? Is she single? Is she living with someone? What is her medical history? Does she have a support system in place? Are her friends supportive? Are her family supportive? What does her employer, are they going to be flexible? Is it something that she can take time off if needed? Is she willing to reduce or terminate if that's needed? Is she willing to breastfeed if that's important? Again, what type of relationship? This is a really big one. And I think asking really straightforward and honest questions really is best for everyone involved. This has you think about what you are looking for, and then also gives her a chance to elaborate on what she wants. And then just completing a questionnaire is kind of a nice way to screen right from the beginning, because as soon as if you see that she's not married and you want somebody that's married, or you see that she has a lot of, she's not financially stable, then, go from there. It's just really kind of good. It's good to have it in writing for you to look at, to your review, and for her to really be able to complete her thoughts. And then to locate a surrogate. Where will you find a surrogate? There's different ways. Online is where a lot of people go. Just mentioning to a family, a family member, a friend, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. You would be surprised how many times somebody will say, you know what, I want to help you. Or, maybe my cousin will help you. Or I have this girl at work that would like to do it. She's done it before. That type of thing, just kind of putting it out there. But be open and honest with yourself and the surrogate just from the very beginning, once you do locate them, of kind of what you're wanting, what you're needing. And then as far as what to be aware of and what to be avoid in locating a surrogate, we all have heard, kind of the nightmare stories of, they found somebody online and, she wasn't totally honest about her situation, or, you just started talking to her and all of a sudden, she needs, money to get to the appointment. Don't ever give anybody any type of financial anything, definitely in the beginning stages, and definitely not anything outside of what's developed in your contract. There has been many stories that, somebody has been taken advantage of, and that's the biggest risk in, independent surrogacy. It's really quite sad when it does happen, and I have seen it happen and have heard it have happened to people that I've worked with, not as an agency, but as an IVF coordinator during my time.
So what to do once a possible surrogate has been located? Obviously, the in-depth questionnaire that you have created for your surrogate to fill out, you obviously have the answers to those questions. You definitely want to make sure that you review the questions that you've answered. Make sure everything has been answered completely as far as the questions are concerned. So there's nothing that's still leaving a question in your mind regarding the surrogate. If you feel uneasy about a question, let's say the surrogate answered a question and you just kind of don't feel right, or you have more questions to offer answers, definitely follow up on those questions and make sure that you do feel comfortable. At any point in time, if you feel uncomfortable, you definitely want to make sure that you listen to your gut instincts, and if it's not a right match, you'll know. So definitely listen to that. Never settle on a match. That's probably the number one advice to give any intended parent. I know this situation is a very emotional and very overwhelming process to be in, to have a child. But you definitely don't want to rush into things, and you definitely don't want to settle on a surrogate. Having a surrogate match and a solid match is really what's most important throughout this whole journey. This woman is going to be carrying your child for 9 months. So making sure that you trust her 100%, making sure that you guys have a good open communication line and you feel comfortable with the surrogate. Those are things that are extremely important when matching with the surrogate. When you do match with a surrogate, you've got different options. You can meet in person if possible. Internationally, most of the times it's a Skype call or a phone call if a Skype is not available. And you want to make sure that you agree on all the big items that Angela has mentioned in the previous slides, as far as how many embryos to transfer, your views on selection reduction in the chance of multiple pregnancy or a medical issue with the child. And then also the type of experience and relationship that you see yourself having with your surrogate during the process, but also after. And then also you want to make sure what attorney she's working with. So if you find an experienced surrogate, most of the times they will have an attorney that they've worked with. So you just want to get an understanding of what attorney she's working with, and then you can convey that information to your attorney who you've already selected at this point. And then screening the possible surrogate. So you definitely want to request medical records and an OB clearance letter. Basically what that is going to tell you is that she's been seen by an obstetrician who is basically telling you that yes, she is healthy, she is able to carry a pregnancy to term, and there's no issues as far as they're concerned for her to get pregnant again. If the OB will not write this letter, definitely that is a red flag to tell you that they feel the surrogate is not equipped to handle another pregnancy. So then I would move on from that surrogate at that point if you're unable to obtain that letter. It's super important. A lot of the clinics will require a letter from an obstetrician just to make sure that not only are they screening them, but also someone else has screened them as well, and they feel that they also are a good candidate to become a surrogate. You can also review the medical records by the fertility doctor. You want them to do that prior to having screening done. So that would be my number one advice for your medical records for your surrogate. Send them over to your IVF clinic, your nurse coordinator or the doctor, and ask them to review it before the surrogate goes in for screening. So you're not having to pay any money to the fertility clinic for a screening of a surrogate they're not going to clear anyways. So that helps alleviate a lot of the financial frustration that intended parents have when going independent. They want the surrogate to be screened right away, and then something comes up in the screening, she doesn't pass. And unfortunately, sometimes intended parents go through to surrogates when they're independent because it's new to them. They don't know what they're looking for. And unfortunately, some things come up, and so you can spend, a couple thousand per screening per surrogate. So you definitely want to help alleviate any of those financial costs that are not needed. So requesting medical records prior to screening would be the best option. Do a background check. Background checks are very important for surrogates. You also do a psych evaluation, which also helps ensure that she can emotionally handle the situation becoming a surrogate. She can handle the pregnancy and giving your child back to you with no issues. And then after that point, that's when she's medically screened. Right. And then same thing again here, medical records and clearance letter. You definitely have the right to request any records to your IVF doctor, and then don't take a surrogate's word for it. So sometimes surrogates, can elaborate experience. They may not tell you all details. They may kind of pick and choose what they tell you. So that's why requesting and actually medical records firsthand is an ideal situation, because then you can get the full picture. And if you full picture or an issue with one of her pregnancies, your IVF clinic can make a note of that and can talk about it directly, or the surrogate as well. And if there is an issue in the medical records and they're not cleared, then you can simply move on and try to find another surrogate. And then the background checks. Not only do you want to do a background check on your surrogate, but if she's married, you also want to do it on her husband. So a lot of times independent parents that go independent, they don't know that. They don't realize that they can also check the husband. So I would definitely recommend checking the husband as well if she's married. And also sometimes the intended parents will also need background checks on themselves. So a lot of, like in California, the San Diego court system down here requires background checks to be done on intended parents, surrogate, and surrogate husband. So that is something that is new that intended parents internationally need to be aware of. Psych evaluation. So psych evaluation done on the surrogate, even if she's proven. So if you find a surrogate online that says, I had my psych evaluation done 4 years ago, I have my report, I can give it to you, that's great. You know, having an initial report, you know, is always great, but you definitely want to have a current psych report done on the surrogate, because a lot of times, a lot of things can happen, you know, in a year period for any given surrogate. So you want to make sure that the psych evaluation is done current to your current match, and make sure you provide that report to the fertility clinic. That's something that a lot of the fertility clinics will request. If you need help locating a psychologist, a lot of the clinics work with psychologists and can give you referrals. So that's a great referral source. Contact your nurse coordinator to let her know that you want a psychologist referral for your surrogate, and I'm sure that they will be happy to provide you with a few. During the psych evaluation, there are different variations. They can be in person, they can be in Skype, they can be over the phone. With an independent match, I definitely would not recommend an over the phone psych evaluation. I would want to do in person, would be my first advice. But if Skype is available, you know, Skype can be also another avenue to do the testing if the surrogate, let's say, is not local to the psychologist. That way, at least the psychologist can see the surrogate face to face and do any testing that's needed. Some of them do personality testing. Some of them just talk about it, the experience in general, asking them detailed questions about their past, their whole viewpoints on surrogacy, why they want to become it, and just to make sure that they have a good, solid foundation, they have a great support system, and they are emotionally stable and can handle this, the pregnancy and the surrogacy in general.
So medical screening is going to be done on 100% of surrogates. I've never seen a surrogate move forward without one. It does cover quite a bit in a medical screening. There's blood testing, urine testing, uterine evaluation, and drug and alcohol screening. The blood testing is going to be HIV, hepatitis, any type of STD testing, as well as typically some hormone levels, complete blood count, make sure that she's healthy as far as blood goes. Urine testing, they're going to test her urine. Usually they're checking that for chlamydia and gonorrhea, and also for just some basic screening to make sure things are okay there. And then a uterine evaluation where they look inside the uterus. That can be done via ultrasound or into the uterus with a hysteroscopy where they take a look. This is going to let them know if she has any polyps, adhesions, fibroids, or anything like that. And then, of course, drug and alcohol screening is part of the initial screening. That is something that you will need to kind of think about and see if that's something you want to continue on through the whole pregnancy or just with the initial screening. Once the surrogate has been cleared on all aspects, psychologically, background check, and medical, then you're going to have final clearance. And when you're doing this independently, I suggest that you make sure that you have copies of everything and always keep them. The background check, the psychological evaluations, the clearance statement from the fertility center. You want everything on record and very clear of what she's been approved of. And if there's any red flags anywhere, you need to kind of list those. Especially put your trust in your fertility center. When those surrogates come in for their medical screening, the IVF coordinators, the MAs, the medical assistants, and the doctors, they're interacting with her. They're really talking to her usually. They know. I wish I had a nickel for every time I met with a surrogate, and within 5 minutes I knew, wow, no, she cannot be a surrogate. And then I have suggested I would not work with her. I know that on paper she looks really great, but she showed up. I had a surrogate once came in a bathing suit and a sarong for her screening. I couldn't believe it. And for me, that just showed a lack of maturity and knowing what she was getting into. It's those basic things. And then having that final clearance gives you a good, solid circle of information that you can hold on to and refer to and know that you're moving forward with a really good match. So the legal contracts, because once the medical screening is done, that's where you move to. It needs to be completed by a fertility law attorney. you need separate reference. Excuse me, I can't speak again. Separate representation for intended parents and surrogates. That allows each of you to have representation, say, into the contract, and not any confusion as far as who's working with who. Also, make sure that the attorney you have in your country, I would suggest they review the contract. If they're not going to do that, at least know that you have talked to them about the laws there, and also if there's any visa laws that are coming up, that you know that ahead of time, so there's no difficulty once your child is born. Now, most of the attorneys here in the States, they can also manage your trust accounts. I did see that there was a question about that as far as is the costs and needs of an escrow account. An escrow account is essential. It really does protect you and the surrogate. It does need, here in this country, it has to be held by, or in California, in this state, has to be held by an attorney or an escrow company, someone separate than an agency or a party to the contract. How does it protect the intended parent is a big one that people get, especially independent. They're like, why do we need to spend the money? Well, because you don't want to be continually arguing or discussing money. She'll just make her request to the escrow account. The escrow account or the trust account person should know your contract, what is due, what is not due. And, so she can't just request money and it be sent. And it protects the surrogate, because that trust account needs to be funded with her reimbursement when you complete contracts. She doesn't need to be worrying about whether or not she's going to be able to be compensated. And you need to be not worrying about whether or not, she's going to be getting money that she isn't due. So it is definitely something that does need to be done. And the cost of a trust account, that really can vary, but usually it's between $1,000 and $1,500. And it's money well spent, especially going independent. It really does give security to all the parties. So I know we've covered quite a bit of what needs to go on. And if you're thinking about going independent, you've probably kind of done a lot of research up to this point as well. So if you have any questions, I'm definitely, me and Christina, we're definitely here for you to ask, and we can answer to the best of our abilities.
Great. Thank you so much for the presentation, both. I think there's a lot of good information in there, but I believe, it's also very overwhelming, isn't it? Either way, if you decide to go independent or with an agency. So what tips would you have for people who are just starting to think of surrogacy as an option for them? Where do you start in all of this? For me, the one thing I do suggest, and it does help me because I'm a bit of a type A, but making a list, I know that sounds a little elementary, but it's really essential. It kind of organizes your thoughts and really know what you're looking for and what you want out of the situation and with the surrogate. Basically, just break it down in, let's talk to an attorney, and then let's see, what do we want in the surrogate, and just kind of take it step by step. Don't rush it. I know that you probably want things to move as fast as possible, but it's more important that you take your time and slow down and really make really good, solid decisions than to move quickly, because it is going to make a difference between a successful experience and an unsuccessful experience. Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And I think, probably a question a lot of our attendees have, and which is, why they probably chose to join this webinar as well. What is there an estimate in terms of difference in cost going independently or going through an agency? And then I guess it's cost and time as well. Yeah.
I can kind of talk about some of it, and then I think Christina will be able to give you some too. But cost-wise, obviously going independent, you're eliminating an agency fee, which sounds, it can be quite a bit, but, usually agencies have arrangements with attorneys and psychologists, so their fees are usually adjusted for them. So sometimes that's a little cheaper. But really what you're saving your cost is only the agency fee. Everything else is still there. Your background check is still there. Your psych eval is still there. your medical background, check is still there. The other thing that you might be able to save money on is the agreement that you've made with the surrogate. So as an agency, we have a standard benefit package. That package, when you match independently, doesn't apply. So you can work out with her your own payment arrangement. That, again, is not necessarily where you're going to save your money, because surrogates now are very savvy. So they know what is the standard rate of things to be paid out.
Sure.
But Christina might have some thoughts on that kind of stuff too, because just because you're going independent and you might be saving the money, there are places where it could be more expensive actually to locate a surrogate and do it on your own.
Yeah, it definitely is more expensive. A lot of surrogates, especially the experienced ones, they definitely will ask for a higher base fee than they would if they were signed up with an agency. Because to them, they're pretty much, their mindset is, well, we're going independent, they're not using an agency, so I'm going to have to do things for them because, this is their first time, but I'm experienced. So in that case, that surrogate, was going to ask for a higher compensation. I've also seen a lot of experienced surrogates ask for a retainer fee up front. So that's kind of the same type of, retainer agreement that you would pay an agency, because she feels, again, I'm doing all the work, I'm, making all the connections and making sure everything's going smoothly like an agency does, but we're going independent. So in reality, and that's why you really need to be careful when you do find a surrogate independently. If you choose to go that route, looking at the fees that she's requesting.
So, and I think these costs or these fees, or however you want to call them, they vary per state as well, right? Or
definitely.
Correct. In general, California and Texas are the two states, obviously, that are extremely favorable to surrogacy and the most popular. So the surrogates that reside in California and Texas, they do have a higher compensation than, a surrogate that's in, back east somewhere, or in a smaller town like Idaho, or, something where the cost of living is extremely low.
And that's kind of like the big thing a lot you'll see when you match independent, especially with proven surrogates or surrogates. Sometimes what you need to be aware of is if they're going independent, there might be a reason why. So we actually just heard that in a talk that we listened to not too long ago, that frequently when they're matching independent, you might get a lot of, oh, you don't need to do a background check in the county that I live in. Oh, I have a psych eval from 2 years ago, so you don't need to repeat it. None of that is true. You always have to do a current background check and a psych eval. And if you don't know where to get one, reach out to your fertility center. And in all honesty, Christina and I have more than once helped an independent match that does that. They're like, we don't know who to go to. We don't know what to do there, and we can help you. The folks, when you're doing independent, is just really protect yourself, really listen to your instincts, and do not budge on the necessary things. When you start to budge on things like psych evals, background checks, that's when you have problems. That's where you hear about the stuff that didn't go well. Most people can quote a story or two, in the news or on yahoo.com that made it on there, and they're independent matches usually. And there were some red flags. And one of those is, I don't need a psych eval. I had one 4 years ago when I did my first surrogacy. No, you always need to repeat them. That's a big one.
Good tips. So in your presentation, you spoke obviously about, okay, what you should look out for in terms of selecting a surrogate. But as you've both been surrogates as well, what are you looking for in terms of the IPs, the intended parents? Do you have any requirements? I mean, it's a partnership in that sense. So what did you look out for when you were starting your journey?
For me, it was more of their relationship with the intended parents that was most important to me. I wanted a family close relationship, so I wanted somebody that wasn't just going to go to the doctor's appointments after the delivery, they were gone. I wanted them to be a part of my life. I wanted them to be a part of my family. I want my children to know them. I want them to feel comfortable to come over to my house and vice versa, me over to their house. But that's just me personally. So, some surrogates want that type of connection, but other surrogates don't. Other surrogates will say, you know what, I'm fine if you want to come to the appointments. I'm fine with whatever relationship that you're comfortable with after your baby is born. I'm fine with that. So and that's why you need to make a list of what you're comfortable with. So if you're comfortable with a family type relationship, then you'd find a surrogate that would be kind of like me and what I was looking for. Or if that's not something you're comfortable with, then you need to find a surrogate that's more business friendly, is what we call it in the industry. So there's two forms. There's the family close relationship type surrogate, and then there's also what we call a business friendly relationship. So they have a relationship, of course, communication during pregnancy, but typically after delivery, you both go your own separate ways, and that's that. So.
And I think surrogates really do look to be valued and appreciated. For me, it was important. I did mine, it was a long time ago, 22 years ago. So it's been a really long time, but mine was independent, as most of them were back then. And mine was really, I needed a connection on some level. I didn't necessarily need a friendship, but I wanted to feel like they really wanted a family. This is what they really were striving for. And as a surrogate, that was important to me. I didn't want someone that just was like, yeah, I want a baby now, and I want to hurry up. And so each surrogate's different, but they definitely, they want to be appreciated and valued and know that they're helping you. I think I want to make sure if Shannon is still there. I know she had questions about costs compared to agency fees. I don't know that we gave a specific dollar amount because that is kind of hard, but it really can vary. If you picked one surrogate independent, you agree, no problems, really all you're saving is the agency fee. The second you have to screen more than one surrogate, you've probably spent more than you would with an agency. There's very few, I actually don't know of any except for ours that do offer services to independent matches, but it's always worth asking.
What's the best way to reach out to you guys if you have any questions?
Email or our emails
are
really, there you go. Yeah.
Is that the best way, by email or?
Yeah, email or our cell phones, but email is on our phones. We're very responsive, both of us. We can ask any type of, we can answer any questions via email. And if you send an email, just say, hey, call me. We can do that too. We do Skype a lot as well. And we're here for you guys. It's independent is a nerve-wracking thing. And if we can help you in any way, we definitely will.